Well, good morning. We're going to go ahead and get started for our second live forum that we've got. Today, we're going to go from 11 o'clock until 12:30. I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm Kelly McGovern. I'm the superintendent for Sweetwater School District Number 1. And we're here to visit with you today about some cost saving ideas and a budget deficit that the district has and moving forward, along with several other districts within the state. Before we get started today, like I said, I'm Kelly McGovern, and I'd like to introduce some people that are here with me that are going to be participating in the forum as well.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Casey Arnoldi. I'm the Special Services Director for Sweetwater 1.
Hi, I am Stephanie Tolman. I'm the Chief Information Officer for Sweetwater 1.
Good afternoon. I'm Nicole Bolton, and I am the Human Resource Director for Sweetwater School District Number 1.
Good morning. My name is Scott Duncan. I'm the CFO for the district.
Hello, I'm Jody Garner. I'm the Chief Academic Officer for the district.
Dan Celeroli, Director of Facilities for the district.
Thank you to everybody that's joining us today. We can see on the side from our YouTube that we have additional people that are popping on there. So we welcome everybody, even if you can only give us just a couple of minutes on this busy day, or if you have several questions, we welcome those. Over on the right-hand side, please feel welcome to put questions or comments in there. And then also the district, we have one other live forum that we'll be doing today, and that begins at 5:30 until 7 o'clock. But also we've got a district email that is set up until tomorrow at 4 o'clock to accept other ideas and suggestions as we move forward through this process. I'm going to get us started really quickly about what has the district done so far to get us to this point. What is the district really looking at that we need all of our stakeholders involved, and we appreciate your input. So if we could, Zach, I'm going to go ahead and start with the process that we've been doing. On the district website, on the homepage on sweetwater1.org, there's a link on there, and it's called Sweetwater 1 Cost Savings Task Force. And if you click on that and scroll down, there's several documents that are on there that the district has been using to really get good facts and kind of the state of the district in lots of different areas. There's information on that website about staffing in all classes and grade levels from kindergarten through 12th grade, insurance information on premiums, facilities, conditions of our schools, class size, all kinds of good information about just kind of the nuts and bolts of what makes Sweetwater 1 operate on a daily basis. The district put together a cost savings task force. We've done that before. We did that in 2016-17. And it really was a good vehicle for the district to gather input from our community, from our staff, from our parents, about one, what would they like to see in their school district? What do they value in education? And then also as a way to gather ideas for cost savings and ideas to share. So here we are, fast forward for this year, we put together another task force. We've got about 42 members of our community that serve on that. I'd like to say thank you to those people very much. We've met 2 times, and we have 2 more meetings that are scheduled in the future, one for this Thursday evening and then the next Thursday night as well. The idea is that we're going to take all of the feedback that we have on our live forums. We had one this morning, and then now and then again this afternoon, and then the email address, and we're going to put those ideas together, and we're going to bring those forward for the group on Thursday evening to take a look through and have ideas to consider. But really, this task force, just very quickly about how did we get here and what is really the purpose as we move forward. At the end of August, Governor Gordon asked districts to make a 10% cut to their budget. And that was in response to a projected $500 million shortfall for the state of Wyoming in K through 12 education. And then what followed from there is a letter that was sent to the board chairs from the Select Committee on School Finance and Recalibration, asking them to see what that impact would be like on the daily operations if those type of budget cuts were actually to come to fruition. Well, needless to say, the effects of that would be absolutely devastating for education. So very quickly, the district assembled a task force. We asked for input from our community on those that were willing to participate and serve on that. And from there, like I said, we moved forward with 2 of the meetings that we've had. And just to ask our community, what do you value in education? What do you want to see from your district? And then again, bring those forward to share with our Board of Education and then also the community. With that, we've got, like I mentioned on the website, there's several documents that are on there that really is good information from budget projections, our current budget, where does the money go, how is that money allocated. There's a couple of the documents that we just want to highlight just to kind of set the stage for our live forum today. And then we're going to open that up for any questions that anyone has. We welcome those. And again, I encourage everybody to please take a look at that website to get some of that information.
I'm just going to jump in really quick. Zach, thank you. He went to the sweetwater1.org, and right at the top is a maroon link that says Cost Savings Task Force. We'll walk through it again really quick. If you just click on that link, that will take you to all the information from the cost savings meetings, all the documentation that's been shared, and everything that we've been referencing today. Sorry, Kelly.
So to start us off, Nicole, do you want to go through some of those talking points or the class sizes? I don't.
I
Which
can
one?
do both.
Okay.
And if you want me to do both right now, I can do both.
Okay. Which one do you want? Zach, to
I'll
bring
start
up?
with the talking points. Also on the cost savings task force page, there is a page that talks about cost savings task force talking points. And really what it does is it goes over the history of over the last 6 years of what the district has already done to cut costs and save money. This isn't the first time we went through it, but the first time that we went through this 5 years ago is nothing compared to what the cuts are that they're asking us to do now. So as I go over this, these documents, I just want to clarify that these are not things that the district is advocating for, but the amount of cuts that we are being asked to potentially make are so substantial that it is going to take large and drastic measures in order to meet these cuts if we're even able to meet them. Our district runs very lean, despite some opinions. The district runs very lean on teachers and leadership and all resources in order to be fiscally responsible and provide what we can for the kids. So on the talking points, it does go back to 2015, 2016, when we did have to do a reduction in force for paraprofessionals. There were 75 paraprofessionals that were RIFed. When I refer to RIF, it means reduction in force. In 2016, 2017, we began freezing salaries. We froze salaries for 3 years, which essentially is not giving our employees a raise, but when other costs go up, I guess in some manners you can say that they are taking a pay cut at that point. It goes through the numerous certified positions, classified positions, and administrative positions that we have absorbed, typically through attrition. We have not had to do a reduction in force for our certified staff, even with the major cuts that had to come in 2016, 2017. And at all costs, we will do what we can to avoid hurting our staff and the students. It did seem like we were hitting a reprieve and able to unfreeze 2 of the year's salaries, so we still have a 3rd year that we haven't been able to unfreeze. But through all of these cuts, it has come at a cost at the amount of positions that we have not been able to fill. Anytime that we go through cuts and I'm unable to open jobs because I'm not sure really what we are going to have open, who we're going to have to move into what, it puts that timeline that much further out, which makes it extremely difficult to fill jobs. And Sweetwater One is not alone in the challenge of being able to fill certified teaching positions, but one of our challenges is being so close to Utah. When they matched our salaries, we don't have the entities and arts and some of the things that Utah is able to offer our younger generations that they want. And it's very hard for us to compete with that. So as you read through that document, you'll be able to see all of the measures that the district has already taken in absorbing a lot of positions and just the different steps that we have taken in order to save costs. We had to close Lincoln Elementary at one point as well. Another document I would like to bring your attention to is, I guess it would be our school sections document. And what this school sections document highlights, we'll bring that up onto the page so that you guys can see it. It highlights our K through 6 schools. And you can see that when I talk about sections, I'm actually talking about active classrooms that we have going on. So if I said we have 3 sections of kindergarten, it means that I have 3 active kindergarten classes open in that building. So if we just looked at Walnut, for instance, it shows that Walnut has the capacity to have 15 sections K through 4, and currently they do have 15 sections. If we jumped over to, say, like Desert View has the capacity for 20 sections K4 as it currently is, and right now only 15 of those sections are filled. When I say that we're having the cost savings task force and the district is having to look at drastic measures in order to potentially meet these cuts, we have to look at every avenue, and that includes class size that the legislature has brought up. Again, I want to be very clear, we are not advocating for class size to increase. But if we go down this document to the next green section, if we just took our current enrollment now and projected it into next year, which is difficult because we are in COVID times, so it's hard to tell if our enrollment is down because of people choosing different options for education or if they've moved out of state due to our economy. But if it stayed as is, sorry, that would be the purple section. Thank you, Zach. We would be able to absorb 4 sections total in our K-6 schools. If you go down and if class size were to increase, say K3 to 25 students and 412 to 30 students, you would see that we would be able to reduce an additional 10 sections. And then if you go down a little bit further to the bottom, oh gosh, this one makes me just sick to even say out loud, but say like class size went to 30 K3 and 35 412, we would be able to reduce an additional 29 sections. And so the reason why this document's important is not only to see what the devastating effects would be if we increase class size, but also to look at our current capacity for students and sections in the schools. And so those 2 documents are critical to look at when we are looking at the different information and data that we have that's being brought forth to the task force. Do you have anything to add to those documents, Ms. McGovern?
No, that's great, Nicole. I think, even putting those class sizes together like that, we would never advocate. That is not something we want to see in our classrooms here within the district. It's important that we have quality staff that stands in front of our kids in an environment that really helps them learn the best way that they can. So a grim picture with that, but we also think it's important that we get good factual knowledge out there for people to take a look at it. With that one, Scott, do you want to talk about some of the financial projections from there? And then we could probably open it up a little bit for questions.
Sure, you bet. So to give you some idea about the projected deficits going forward, an example of a 10% reduction in our block grant is about 8.14 million. 20% would be 16.28 million, and 30% would be 24.42 million. And for certified positions, this would result in a reduction in force with newer staff vacating the job and possibly leaving the state. This will present a future recruiting problem and teacher shortage, including certification concerns. Now, Sweetwater One currently experiences difficulty in recruiting all certified positions, including special education certified staff, and has so for many years. For next year, we know that we're expecting a deficit of about 3.02 million for next year, so that's FY22. The year after, FY23, a projected deficit of 7.8 million. And for fiscal year 24, a $12.8 million deficit. The reduction in foundation funding is largely due to a decrease in our ADMs. The legislative model automatically adjusts for these fluctuations through the block grant and major maintenance funding formulas. In other words, fewer ADMs reduces the allotted funding provided from the state level for building maintenance. The block grant is lowered automatically with decreased enrollment and allows for a 3-year rolling average, which allows districts time to adjust.
Real quick, Zach, would you bring up the sub costs and the leave document?
We like to catch Zach off guard.
Sorry. This is what you get when you get live. This is just another document that is on there that has been brought forth to the cost savings task force. It's also been brought forth to our start and end times task force. This just shows a trend over, or not even trend, a data over the last 3 years. Notice that last year, the data is only through March, so the expenses would have been more had we still been in person. So please take those numbers with a grain of salt, but the last 3 years, we did break it down by day, so you could see the amount of absences on that day for that year, and then what the associated cost was with that, and that's vertically. Horizontally, you can see that the absences are broke down by absence type. So activity district is our coaches and our activity sponsors. Personal leave, our staff get 3 days of personal leave over the course of the year. Professional development, you'll see that Tuesdays and Wednesdays are very heavy on that because those are the 2 days that we tend to be able to get sub coverage for the professional development to be hosted within district. Those are typically our committees working on our standards and our curriculum. That is what the alternative calendar task force went to. We didn't do it for cost savings, but now that we are in cost savings times, we're going to have to look at that a lot different. We are hoping to offer more professional development and stuff outside of the actual contact days with students so that we can keep our teachers in the classroom. And then you can see the sick leave. This is for all certified staff. So, oh, that was quick. This is for all certified staff. So it is our administrators, our teachers. So you'll see on this one, it's been updated. The green is the vacation because that is for 12-month administrators. So we don't require a sub, so there's no cost, but we did include all of the leaves for everybody to see. So that's just another document on there, something that we are looking at now to hold into cost savings.
Thank you, Nicole, for going over that. We've got a couple of comments over on the side in there. Ms. Simpson, we appreciate the feedback that you've provided for us on there. That's very important as well. I know that's not a question per se, but I also appreciate those ideas and some things that you're seeing. We know that we want to have the best is, of course, is to have our teachers in the classroom as much as we can. We do understand that there's times when they simply cannot be there, and we want to get the best substitutes to take care of our kids during that time while they're away. And so we appreciate that. And then also your feedback on some security, school safety. That's one of our priorities. So thank you for that feedback on there. We appreciate that. Why we have some people that are still logging on, and that is great. If we could, Zach, what if we went back to, Nicole was talking about that document about class sizes and going through what that would really look like. Not a good practice that we want to do at all. But on the top of that document, there's a couple of charts on there about our schools and our buildings and what all that means as we move forward. And so we know we've got Dan here with us. And so Dan, maybe you could walk us through about what those numbers are and why that's so important. I don't want to go over something so fast, and that's good information, I think, for people to have.
Sure. When you look at these scores, you have two. You have one says building districts building by FCI scores, and the building district buildings by age. They kind of run about the same as far as you can almost take the age of the building and look at the FCI score and kind of expect to see differences between the newer schools versus the older schools. One of the requirements by the state under state statute is every 4 years the state goes out and they get a independent engineering firm, and they go around and they score all of the facilities throughout the entire state of Wyoming. What they do is they come around and there's approximately 24 main building components, and those components get scored. A component would be roofing system, roofing coverings, mechanical systems, windows, doors, things like that. They score them 1 to 5, 1 being needs immediate attention, 5 being it's like brand new. They also score, that scoring is based on percentage of the building. So in other words, if you have, 400 windows in a building and you have 100 of them that are, in disrepair, you get a score of 25, or a total score of 75% of those windows are in good shape. So you may not score a low score, even though you have 100 windows that need to be replaced. It takes an awful lot to lower the scores when they're scoring them 1 through 5. Then they take those scores, they go through all the buildings, they take those scores back. They actually give the districts an opportunity to comment on their scores. And once all that's done, they take those scores, they put them into a long equation, and they come out with what they call the FCI score. And the FCI score is an overall score. Now that score is completely opposite of how they score components. Components, remember I said the low score means it's in disrepair, higher the score 1 through 5, 5 meaning it's like brand new. So when you look at these scores, the lower the score means the less issues that building has. So if you look down, we've got some of the newer school buildings and are in better shape. If you see, one of the things you'll see is Lowell. Lowell is on there, and it's actually in really good shape. And the reason is because we eliminated the old 1926 portion of it and renovated more than 50% of the building. So that's why that score is where it's at. But if you look over at Lincoln, Lincoln is basically a stick-built building with some, CMU, and it's got such a high score that it was deemed, not just by me, but by the FCI scoring team and the state, that it was too much money to invest in to lower that score. And so they gave us the option of demoing it or just we can actually give that back. I think that's on BLM contract. The other is Rock Springs High School. You have Desert View, you have Overland, Walnut. Some of these are the older schools. When you look at those scores, they're all up in the 0.27, 0.25 range. The reason why a lot of those scores are the way they are is mechanical systems, windows, some of the systems that you really have to dump an awful lot of money into the building and also shut the school down in order to upgrade a lot of that stuff. This year, actually, for the last 6 years, we averaged roughly $3 million over the summer months in repairs and replacements, which is classified major maintenance. Major maintenance money can only be used on these components that we score the buildings on. It's repair and replacement of. We can't add to anything with major maintenance money. It can only be used for the repair and replacement of, and basically lower the overall FCI score is done with major maintenance money.
Can I ask you a quick question on that, Dan, as far
Yes.
as the major maintenance goes? So if a building doesn't have air conditioning, can you add air conditioning if it's just the repair and replacement of existing?
No, in fact, that's a great question because I actually brought to the attention of the state at a select committee meeting one time and also with the school facilities, because there were districts. I serve as was the head of the facility managers group, and one of the questions that was constantly coming up was, and they were being turned down if you had a rooftop package unit. Package unit is by definition has air conditioning and heating in it, and we had package units up at the high school, and we replaced them with a package unit. But a lot of schools had package unit. Well, back in the old days, package units were non-existent. You had a rooftop unit that supplied strictly heating. Well, as those went bad, replacing them, people were replacing them with package units, which had heating and air conditioning on them. And they were being rejected because they said that you didn't have air conditioning, so you had to back out the cost of air conditioning. I've done this kind of work almost my entire life. So over 40 years, I've never seen anyone be able to buy a unit that you can separate the cost. They sell it as a unit. So what they were asked to do is the state finally changed their position on it and said that you have to look at if it's cheaper to go back with a straight heating system, that's what you have to go for. If you want a package unit, which is air conditioning, then the district has to pay for the difference in cost. So no, it's major maintenance money. If you do not have it, you cannot purchase it with major maintenance. Now, the only exception is if that package unit is cheaper to purchase than a straight heating system. And honestly, in today's world, you can't find just a straight heating system. So at that point, it becomes more economical to purchase the package unit. And that's the only way. But if you have a school and everything is running fine, and we have like Overland, take Overland, Walnut, their mechanical systems are old. They're ranked at 2. They don't have air conditioning. I can't take major maintenance money and put major maintenance money and purchase an air conditioning system for those schools. Doesn't have it now. I can't put it. I can't use major maintenance money to acquire it. So from that perspective, no, major maintenance will not allow you to add on. Major maintenance doesn't allow you to upgrade. So if we go with a heating system or a different air handler system, and we're replacing one that is a standard belt drive, and now all of a sudden there's one that comes out with what they call a variable frequency drive, VFD. We have to technically pay for the VFD because it's an upgrade in what we have, unless they no longer make that type of system that is just strictly a belt drive, with a contactor, and all the bells and whistles. So there are lots of limitations on major maintenance. Major maintenance, like I said, it only pays for component level spendings in order to increase or decrease the overall FCI score. It does not pay for wages. I can't, if I have my guys working on, perfect example, if you have a heat pump goes bad and the heat, the pump for your heating system is, the motor and the impeller assembly, okay, one assembly, roughly $3,500. It will take my guys several hours to change one out. The only thing major maintenance will pay for is that part. does not reimburse the district for labor.
So this really, we couldn't say, you know what, just scrap it. We're just not going to fix the stuff at Lincoln, pretend it was still open and take that money and then put it towards our deficit that we have in our general budget.
No. The state statute is clear. State statute only limits, it limits to what we can spend it for. I actually have 3 funding streams. One is major maintenance, one is what comes through the block grant, and the other is what we get through rec mill. Rec mill and major maintenance money by statute, I can only use for certain projects that are repair replacement. Rec mill is a little more forgiving because we can't add things with rec mill because it's a different public stream. But I can't replace an air handler with rec mill dollars. It has to go to something that is deemed as community use. But when it comes to the block fund, the block grant, that money, as that money gets cut, then I get cut on potentially on the amount of people that I have working in my department. But that is also the money that I depend on for our daily preventive maintenance programs. So and this was an issue at the last select committee meeting. The select committee, not as a whole, but the majority of them believe that they should cut the funding stream of major maintenance. Right now, major maintenance in their funding stream, they have an equation of 2%. So I'm supposed to get 2% of whatever the deferred maintenance cost is for our equipment, which is determined by the FCI score. And they take that 2%, and that's what we get to fund our component level repairs. They want to drop that down to 1.75. They were supposed to be increasing it this coming year. 2021, it was actually supposed to go up to 2.5 because the engineering group that in the past has done the majority of the FCI scoring through the state has given the state a document that shows all building maintenance throughout the state of Wyoming is underfunded. It's underfunded in the block grant side. It's underfunded in the major maintenance side. The state has invested over $3 billion since I have been working for school districts. So it's 15, 16 years, 3 billion with a B in building new schools. And they are undercutting the maintenance of those schools.
So can I just from what I'm gathering from not being a maintenance person, from none of that. So we're having to use general fund for preventative maintenance, which keeps our stuff up and running.
Mhm.
We're getting money cut. They're cutting out of other places. So really we're not going to have funds to maintain our buildings or to prevent so that we can keep things running longer because of the way that things are rolling out.
It is, and it's a complicated issue. When I see the projections of how many people we're going to put in a classroom, okay, that affects major maintenance money. Because if you take and you increase the size of classrooms and thereby increasing what the allowable capacity is for those classrooms based on education models, now you've vacated some classrooms. And I get paid my major maintenance. Part of that formula is butts and seats based on square footages. So if I have a 78,000 square foot building and we have, say, 300 kids spread out because we're meeting their current allowable, student capacity per classroom. Now all of a sudden they increase that and we have less classroom, we're using less classrooms because we're taking kids from one, we're increasing the size of, you take 2 kindergartens, maybe make them 1, okay? You can take a 4-section school basically and cut it in half. Well, that means I have 50% of that school that is vacant. That affects how I get my funding because now they look at it like I have the allowable square footage based on kids per square foot. They've increased the allowable or the amount of kids, which means they decreased the amount of allowable square footage per child. Now, here's the rub that most districts are going to have. When we build schools, they tell us how many square feet we should build a school to. So now if they change the rules and force more kids into classrooms, thereby really backing off on the funding to that school, now we have less money to fund a school that they told us how big it should be. So when you get back to the FCI scoring, it's not going to be very long before your FCI scores in the newer schools start going up. And then you're going to take schools like the high school, the pre-existing schools. You've got Overland, Walnut, the older schools. that don't have air conditioning. Those are going to be addressed in what they call the FCNI score, which is Facility Condition Needs Index. If you take a 70,000 square foot school and you dump $1 million into it, you've lowered that FCI score significantly, because $1 million in a school 78,000 square foot or 75,000 makes a huge difference. You take $1 million and you put it into a school that has 332,000 square feet, it's a drop in the bucket. You haven't really done much.
So
that
for
school.
example, Rock Springs High School, $1 million in Rock Springs High School versus $1 million at one of our elementary schools.
Yeah, it's huge. Well, when we did the rooftop units this year, the rooftop units were close to $800,000. At that same time, I had them come in and give me an estimate on replacing the roof. Just replacing the roof on the old section, because that school was built in several sections, several different years, but just in that one old section was $1.2 million. That's just one section of the school. I think it was last summer, or the beginning of this fall, I forget when, we recoded the top of the auditorium. You know, that was a couple $100,000 to gain us a couple more years of life on that roof. So to roof, if you were to look at roofing the entire high school, you're looking at several millions of dollars, and you haven't done anything inside for the educational equitability when you're comparing to other schools, newer schools, for the students. So that's why when we went to the select committee, and this question came up in the previous meeting, you know, about how long do we have in this high school? When we approached the select committee, back when we were going for the satellite school, that question was asked of me. And honestly, the way that the amount of money that it takes to keep the current high school operational and to increase it and to increase the components to the point where the score would drop down to an acceptable level, and to meet the needs, air conditioning throughout the school, data, you know, having the data, you know, to be equitable compared to the newer schools would take so much money. I mean, we're talking, I had made the comment earlier, and I would stick by it, $5 million for the next 4 to 5 years.
Each year?
Every year, to bring that school up to the standard that it would be, what the state would deem equitable with NC, any of the schools in Laramie County. I mean, and that's a tough order. So that's why satellite school is phase one. And the hope would be that within the next 10 years, satellite school is built out so that we can accommodate students and give them the same opportunities that they have in any of the other newer schools, along with the same environment for learning that the newer schools have. Because right now, we try, but it is really tough to improve on a building that's as old as it is. And the structural, the way that they added onto it, it poses lots of other issues as far as you can't just run a wire from here to there. When they build a new wall or build a new addition, you're building along an outside wall, which generally structurally is built differently than an interior wall. So where you can normally punch a hole through some sheetrock and, you know, put fire caulking on, now you're talking about hammer drilling in order to go through brick, concrete, CMU, whatever's there to get to the other side.
I'll say we've seen that with just our network as we do access points, you know,
Yeah.
that affects how it gets through on the
Yep.
other buildings.
And then you're dealing basically with 5 different buildings in one area. It takes special requirements of everything, whether it's the data for, you know, computer technology or it's door access controls. It becomes a huge issue. So FCI scores, they're important because they kind of give their barometer as to where we're at as far as our buildings. And they're required by state statute. And if they start cutting funds to the major maintenance and to the block grant, and really when you look at it, they're talking about cutting percentages, but then inside each of those, the formula is based on ADM. So if you have fewer kids, it's self-correcting anyway. So they're taking away a percentage or a portion of a percentage. Your ADM has gone down in some of the lower levels. So that corrects it again. And then plus they're cutting, that's like 3 cuts for my department alone.
So I think it's huge. I know Scott talked about this, but as a lay person who has never been a teacher, I've worked a lot in education off and on. When we talk about ADMs, that's the number of kids, our average daily membership, the kids that are in the building. And for the people who have been in Sweetwater County forever, we build new schools. What's the first? And then we're having budget cuts. What's the first thing that you hear in the community? You know, oh, we closed all these schools, we're building new schools, and now we don't have money to fund education. I don't think people understand. Maybe Scott or Kelly, you guys could talk about how that is so different. The new school is not really the impact from really our general fund. They're separate. Right?
I can take the first part of that.
I don't even know how many parts I actually said, so
Well, I think,
kudos.
for me, it comes down to the educational suitability of the building. And, it's clear that if you have a newer building that is better suited for education now than it would be if it was a 1926 building, which we've seen. And in terms of the ADMs, that's a driver for the operational costs of the districts, whereas the building of a new school is a separate pot of money that comes from the state school facilities department at the state level. And, maybe Dan can dive a little bit more into that about how they determine when a school should be built and on what criteria and how they rank the schools in terms of funding.
Okay. There's two criteria to get a new school, and getting in a new school is no easy task. If you look at capacity trumps everything unless you have a school that is in really major disrepair. And I've actually sat on almost every single committee where they came to ranking for schools. I've been on component level scoring of schools, and I've gone out and inspected schools in other districts. I've yet to see a school that was in such disrepair that it trumped a capacity issue. So when you talk about a capacity issue, for instance, in this district, if we start seeing an influx of students coming to our district for whatever reason, I have to get what they call a white page report. The white page report was actually, I had to start submitting that and filling one out at 87%. Select committee is now deciding, they're voting on increasing that to 90%. What that would mean is when all of our schools are filled to, or whichever school is filled to 90%, we have to first look at the most cost-effective means of how we're going to handle that. If you can't bus them someplace else, you've tried everything, and it comes down to we have no other options, we have to build a school, then you get on a list because then again, they go by. What's that?
What was that?
We gotta, as you're talking about that, there's a great question in that chat too, and I think it fits right in where you're heading.
You'll have to read it to me.
So, yeah, one of our viewers says, has coatings, right, Kel?
Yes.
Has coatings like illuminationing been considered for some of the older roofs to extend their lives? Illuminationing.
We actually have looked at putting coatings of some sort onto the roofs as far as if that's what we're talking about, extending the roof life. And we do. That was one of the things that we did up at the high school. One of the problems that we have, and I hate the word problems, but it's an issue, is the majority of our schools, for some reason, have what they call Stevens roofing system on it. Stevens roofing system has gone out of business. I don't know, they were put on somewhere around 12, 14 years ago. Most roofs come with a 20-year life expectancy. And those roofs I try to coat because what Stevens is no longer manufacturing those roofs. I can't find people that will work on those roofs. It's tough getting someone like at the high school this year when we had to put new roof jacks on, which is what holds the equipment, your HVAC units up on the roof. Finding somebody who can actually weld that poly type roofing system to a new system. So we do coat the roofs. We have in the past with good luck trying to extend them. But like I said, it's really hard to get somebody to come in and look at the old Stevens roofs because there is no warranty on them. We're on our own with them. And quite frankly, the expense of if they make a mistake. So we're pretty particular when we go out. We deal with an architect who has had pretty good success with coating the roofs. And we do use a product. We have used a product. The latest one, like I said, a little while ago was up at the high school over the auditorium. So yes, we do.
You know, Dan, when you were going through just the process for facilities and keeping our schools up to shape, there was one thing that you were mentioning on there is about when Nicole was going over class sizes on there and really the role of why we're having the live forums and the task force and all those things. And I'm not sure if I mentioned this at the beginning, but the questions that we've got over on the side or the feedback that we're receiving, you know, that task force group isn't a decision-making group at all. They're really to provide input as we move forward. And when you were talking about, you know, class sizes and those kind of things, you know, it made me think back to what Nicole was saying about, you know, we don't ever want to go down that road. When we had the class sizes on there, those are, and you were talking about educational suitability and how many kids can go in a classroom and those kind of things. It just kind of brought me back to, you know, about what's good for kids, what's good for teachers so that, you know, they have a good place to learn from a facility standpoint. And, you know, and how many kids can go into a classroom and what's just not effective or good for people as we work through that. So I appreciate you going through that and talking about those pieces on there because it really does tie forward. And a lot of our things that are coming forward, our ideas and our feedback and our input really are good things to help us because you never know, you know, through discussions what ideas can come forward, you know, as we move forward with it. Over on the side, there was a question on there, Dan, and it says, did he say J.P. Stevens?
No. Stevens Roofing is the type of roofing system that is prevalent throughout our district. I'm not really a roofing guy, so when I heard that we had Stevens roofs when I first got here 6 years ago, didn't think much of it until we had our first leak in a Stevens roofing system, which was out at North Park, and I couldn't find anybody that would come out and put the drainage, the roof drain bowls into the roof. And finally, we did find somebody who could guarantee their work, but not the roof. And that's when it was explained to me. And my secretary, Joanne, who has been here for quite some time, she pulled up the documents and we saw that Stevens Roof had gone out of business several years ago. In fact, it was like 5 years after they did the last roof. And so none of our roofs are under warranty, except we do have a couple, you know, the newer ones, obviously, but the older ones, you know, that's why we do recoat, because I don't really feel that it's hard to justify to the state that I have to replace a roof that is under warranty, you know, no longer under warranty. So we do recoat them to try to extend the life expectancy of the roof.
Thank you for that. Yeah, just simply putting in air conditioning units is definitely a complex process on there, and it's not as easy as, you know, people would want or what you would think in order to make those things happen. You know, one of the other areas I think that's good information that people know, and as we're open there on the side for questions to answer, Casey, would be special services. Just really quick about, you know, how does funding work for special services? What is the district looking at in that area? I know we've got, you know, a lot of people online with us, but I think that's good information to get out too.
And Ms. McGovern, can I piggyback off what you were talking about, class sizes? Sorry. One of the things too, I don't know, is it working? Oh, one of the things
Zach
too.
just has to take his headphones off when anything slams because we
Ah,
deafen the
sorry.
poor fellow in the back.
Sorry, I was just trying to move it closer. You were talking about class sizes, and some of the questions that have come my way in regards to class sizes is having those sped kids in those gen ed classes in comparison to having them pulled out for those services instead. we have to have a whole realm of servicing for these students, which means we have to give them an LRE, which is least restrictive environment. So some of our students we want to keep in the gen ed because we're seeing that the gen ed students, the students who are exposed to the gen ed curriculum and the same standards are the ones we're seeing the growth on. And so I know that question has come up, why aren't we just pulling them? But we're seeing more growth with those students that are in the gen ed than anywhere. But we still have those students that, maybe they can be in the gen ed, but need some of those other skills reinforced in the resource room. So we do have to have the option of pull out as well for those kiddos. And then there are those students that can't really make it in both settings and need more support than what those two classrooms can provide. And those might be a more pull-out inclusion or a self-contained classroom rather than inclusion. And so I know those questions have come about with those services, but we have to provide a wide range of services for those kids to meet the needs. And so I know that a question around that has come up, so I kind of wanted to clear that up. But also the cost of special ed, because we were capped in 2018 at 13 million. The reason we were capped at the 13 million is because they went off the expenditure from the year before. And so during that year, we saw retirement, we saw a lot of staff leave that year. And so that kind of hurt us when it went to the cap, because we lost those positions. And so we didn't get reimbursed for the staff we missed. So it cost us more because every year you have maintenance of effort. So we have to spend at least the same amount or more from the following year. And if you don't, you could get federal grants taken away. So we have to make sure we meet that maintenance of effort. So I know that has come up because that was 745,000 over cost that we had to come out of the general ed fund. But
Casey, can I just
Yeah,
ask really quick
sure.
to clarify, because I knew nothing about SPED until I started working with you and Tiffany so closely. But when you say with that teacher, we got capped on that $13 million year, that was a year that we had a lot of people, even we couldn't fill positions.
We didn't
So we
fill
ended up not using that money, so we didn't get reimbursed for that money because we couldn't fill those positions.
and those positions were teachers, itinerant staff such as OTs, PTs, school psychologists, also your paraprofessionals. So we had that year where we weren't able to fill some of those positions. So the cap went off the lower end and not what we expended the year before. So that took out of that general fund. So
Well, and this may be redundant for a lot of people, but I know for me, I had no clue the volume of services that is provided through special education and required by law. So when you say the OTPT, I think there's a lot of people out there that don't realize the volume of services that your department's required to make sure that we meet the needs of students. Would that be?
So students in special ed, we have those that just receive the academic services under IDA, just such as written language, reading, math. But we also have those students that receive occupational therapy, speech therapy, whether it's RTIC or language. But also we have physical therapists, adaptive PE, and you have your school psychologists, your social workers, counselors such as that nature. So those add on a whole realm of things, not only teaching. So we have some kids that just might need speech or TIC, but then you have some that have the whole gamut of services. So we have to make sure we have all of those and we provide those based off IDA. So if not, we could be held legally liable for not providing those services to those kids. So there's a whole legal piece around the money, which I think a lot of people are unsure of. So I think that causes some of those misconceptions of that. So I think that needs clarified with those extra services, because we have some just RTIC with speech, and then some that have reading, writing, math, OT, PT, speech. So then they have all those pieces.
I think what astonished me the most was so it's not just reading, writing, math, that SPED helps students with. There's behavior issues, there's emotional issues, there's so many other mental health pieces that your department helps our kids with that I don't think people, unless they're in it or see it, realize just how high the needs are of students that are coming.
And I think and that's a good point, because in the last couple of years, we're seeing an increase in special education. So over the last years, we've increased almost a percentage point every single year. So even this year alone, we've increased a percentage point to where we're at actually 1,000 students receiving services. I think with COVID, all the social emotional we're seeing in the community and nationwide, but in the community right now that we're servicing, we have a lot of kids needing social, emotional, and counseling and social work. So where do you find those services? Because even with counseling, counseling was taken out of one funding model and put into the general fund. So we're seeing an increase of those services with students. So where do you find that? We have to provide that, and that's out of the general fund to that counseling piece for not only SPED, but gen ed. And so I think those are some of those pieces that we're seeing an influx in, along with student services. So that's hard, but another piece to that would be your out-of-district placements. That's another huge area people wonder about, because that's a huge funding source, because students that have some more severe issues, behaviors, things like that, we may not be able to service in our district because of their high severity of needs. And so where do you place these kiddos? We don't have anywhere in-house, so we have to look at some of those out-of-district placements. And those cost the district money too up front, because those come out of the general fund and then can be reimbursed. But in our community, like right now, the amount of students needing some of that, it's pretty high. But you're looking anywhere from a little over 5,000, 7,000 to over 20,000 a month. So even with that, that could be over 200,000 per kid. And so those are some of those huge costs too that come out that we have to provide under the law, under IDEA.
So that's my other question, because that also astonished me, and maybe I don't know if I'm sounding ignorant, but those out of district placed students, that means, I mean, what does that mean exactly? And can we just say, oh, no, we can't meet your needs, so go find somewhere else? Like, what is the responsibility of the school district financially and to those students?
So with those students, before we even get there, we look at the LRA like I was talking about. We look at what services supports those kids need, maybe an increase of some of those services and supports. But a lot of times those IEP teams, I mean, they've been at those meetings 4 or 5 times before they find something. And sometimes the only way to meet those needs is through the out-of-district placement. So those IEP teams, they come together over and over again to have those conversations, what's next, and then sometimes it just ends up being out-of-district placement based off the needs and the services those placements can provide. Some of those residential placements, they strategically, that's what they focus on, are some of those needs that the district can't offer at that time.
Gotcha.
Casey, thanks for bringing that up about special services, because I think, just a person outside of education doesn't realize what really all goes into that when we say that we want to provide a quality education for all students. All really does mean all. And if you're just joining us now, if you just had a couple minutes to come on in, a couple of things that we're really asking about is, what effects would a severe budget cut have on Sweetwater County School District number 1? And we're asking all of our partners, what do you value in education? What would you like to see? And what cost savings ideas do you have? So over there in the chat, if you've got any ideas, please feel welcome to go ahead and put those in there as we get going. If you're joining us, we went through some of the documents from our cost savings task force. And one of the other things that has always been a priority for the district is, the people inside of our district, our little ones, our students, our young adults, and our staff members. And when Nicole went over some of the budget cuts that we've had over previous years, we've always tried to do what's right for our staff and really keep programs that are good for kids, keep those intact and keep them in place, and keep those reductions as far away from kids as we can. One of the areas that has always been important for the district too is to make sure that our teaching staff, that our teachers and all of the other areas, that they have the resources that they need to be able to do the jobs that they're hired to do. And Jody, I know one of the things that we're getting ready to go through and that you're currently leading the way with your department in the curriculum office is the science resource adoption. And so while we're open for questions here in the chat, and if one comes across, just let us know and we'll jump in. But I think that might be a good topic too, if you want to walk us through about just where are we at with that science process and how might that look as we move forward? How long's it been since
Real
we've
quick,
looked at
too,
it?
Can we clarify, just so, because we had a bunch of comments that came in the morning. I promise we are following the guidelines. We
Oh,
are
with the
6 foot
mask.
distance.
Yes.
If, so some are choosing to still wear a mask. If someone comes in close, we definitely put it in, but put it on, sorry, but we are 6 foot distance. And I just want to clarify that we are following the rules. We got a lot of comments earlier on that. And so I just want to make sure that that was clarified.
We are fortunate enough that in this room, we can maintain our large personal space bubble so that nobody is within the realm that we have to or we're required to wear masks. Just stay away, Casey. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, Nicole, for clarifying that.
Yes.
Jody.
Well, thank you. The one thing that I have really learned as I've joined Sweetwater One is that they have done everything they can to provide the ultimate resources for their teaching staff to directly impact children. And so it's very fun to be a part of a district that puts children first. When it comes to resources, the curriculum department has created a long-range plan that they have really tried to adopt current resources every year. And every subject area is on the long range plan. You can find that on the website if you're ever interested under the curriculum instruction office. And so this year, Mrs. McGovern and the board earmarked $750,000 to purchase science materials. Science has not had an adoption in at least over 10 years from what I can tell and the research that I've been able to do in the office. So it looks like over 10 years since they've had new science materials and resources. And so we have been working this year diligently to be able to adopt K through 12 science curriculum. This is something that Mrs. McGovern and the board have taken very seriously because if there were to be cuts, we may not be able to adopt next year any subject area. And so that's why we are committed to update the last group of teachers and the last really core subject area that needs an adoption. And so we want to get that done this year before, if we did have to make financial cuts as drastic as we're preparing for, that we would have the resources necessary for our teachers to be able to successfully teach science. And so we have a committee. The science committee has come together multiple times. Just this past week, we looked at resources from different companies that K through 4 looked at from 4 different companies, 6 through 8, and then 9 through 12. And so we have narrowed them down to the top 4. And now we are asking the teachers to wrap up their investigations this week and let us know some feedback on the top 4 companies for their grade level. Next week, the science team will come together and make a final decision. And based on that, we will move forward with recommending a science resource for next school year.
So once you narrow that down in the process, then we present that in one of our Board of Education meetings. And then we actually let that go for the whole month. That way our community, our parents can take a look at it. And then I believe the next month it comes back and we get that approved. If the board chooses to do so, and then we want to get those resources ordered and all set and ready to go. That way the district is in a good place to support education in that science area. I know that's been long time coming for resources in there, and they've done a lot of work in previous years with standards and getting things ready to go for our teachers. And so a lot of good people involved in that process, and it takes many great minds to come together and make good decisions as we move forward from there. So thank you for leading that effort.
Yes.
We keep checking over in our chat on the right-hand side, just making sure if there's any um, ideas that people want to share. We're definitely open for some of those. One of the areas too for our district that we've worked together pretty extensively, and I know that area has been spotlighted a little bit last March when we had to go through some different times, but it's really been our technology department and the support that we give for our students and for our staff and for our families. And Steph, do you want to walk through that just a little bit? My computer's froze, and so if there's new comments that are in that right-hand side, I definitely
You know
cannot see
I'm
them.
watching, I'm keeping an eye on our people.
Okay.
I want them to know really any comments, any questions you have. This is very casual. We encourage, it's the best part of this morning was really interacting with the people who commented on the side of our video. For technology, we've really looked very closely at the budget over the last few years. I think this is my 6th year back with the district. We had some questions about software. I wanted to let everyone know that over the last few years, we have really evaluated the programs that we use. We checked the usage, we checked to see what it was doing for student achievement, how the teachers were using it, and worked closely with the curriculum office in order to cut out pieces that we really weren't using or maybe weren't cost efficient for the district. So I think it was probably close to $100,000 or $150,000 that we cut out of our software budget over the last few years. Thanks to capital projects, we have been able to maintain our technology in the district, our network, and the devices that we've given to students. I'm so thankful that we had the support to do that because we were really ready in March last year when everyone was sent home, and we were able to give all of our kids devices to take home and use so that they were still connected in some way to their classroom, their teacher, and their friends. My department has about 18 folks, and we support close to 11,000 devices in the district. If you stop and think about it, really, I have 10 building techs, and so each tech supports over 1,000 computers or iPads. That's a pretty high number, but I have an amazing staff, and I'm very thankful for what they do and the support that they give our teachers and our students, especially. Technology has really come into the spotlight over the last year with COVID-19. It kind of puts us in our element, but we're really happy to bring other folks together, find more efficient and more cost-effective ways to do things, perhaps less in person or less travel. Maybe we can do things online with our staff, and more staff have the opportunity to participate in certain professional development. So yeah, technology's been huge, and we've really worked hard to make sure we're using the money that we have to the best of our ability. And efficiency, we're all about efficiency.
Yes, you guys are. I would agree.
Definitely.
We were going to hit on some of the personnel questions that were asked earlier. So you guys are going to have to help me remember some of them because I can't remember. I know that there was somebody that asked about the Rif policy, and I think I hit this earlier, but Rif stands for a reduction in force, which we have been able to avoid with all of our certified staff, and we will do everything we can to avoid it again. That is a last resort step that we want to take. But there is a policy, GCPD, GCPD, that actually dictates the reduction in force and the steps that would be taken if worst case scenario came that we would have to hit that or do that. Hopefully we don't have to. Another question that had come in, this wasn't directly related to personnel, but it was a really good question about when would these cost savings measures have to be decided upon. And it's so hard right now. So the answer we're hoping is hopefully never. Right now, the legislature and the senators, the different committees are looking at ways to, well, our budget is, I'll let Scott talk about that. Our budget is being looked at and recalibrated, but they can talk about the meetings. We don't know what's going to come down the pike. And so we are planning for the worst and we're hoping for the best. The planning for the worst is drastic. And I want to get that point out to people because you guys need to understand that in order to make the cuts that we would need to make, it is going to be so drastic. I'm not even sure that the district can make those cuts and still operate without taking a class size so astronomically high. It's not even feasible. And so I think in January is when it was initially supposed to happen, but now they're talking about pushing it back. So we just want to be prepared so that when the hammer comes down and they tell us what they're doing, we're prepared to take the steps that we need to take in order to balance our budget and keep schools going. But Kelly and Scott, that was a really good question that was asked. And I think that that is some good information that they need to know. And I do want to put a plug in for Superintendent McGovern and CFO Duncan and also Chair Jellicoe, because they have been testifying in front of the JEC constantly, letting them know the devastating effects that this would have on our school district, multiple school districts, but specifically to ours, and fighting tooth and nail for you guys. So please know that even though this stuff is not easy to talk about, and it isn't things that we want to talk about, it is not, they are not things we're advocating for.
I think I'm going to just jump in because I know exactly what you were talking about from this morning. A few years ago, so many years ago, we did another cost savings task force. Zach, can you go to the website for me? And then up under superintendent along the top menu, we actually have at the bottom the 16-17 cost savings task force. So for people who maybe weren't around for that process, we did this in the 16-17 school year to be ready for the 17-18 school year. So this is kind of all the documentation that followed in. And basically what this committee did was they came up with all the ideas, they got all this feedback, pretty much everything we're doing right now. And then they had that ready to go, which was then passed on to the board. So once we knew what our final budget cut was going to look like for the next year, we could make those decisions to move forward. So it was, I mean, Kelly, maybe you remember better, Scott, but it was waiting for the end of the legislative session. And then it was like, okay, in order to meet those needs, we have to, make these recommendations to the board.
Thanks for leading into that, Steph. That was a good process that had a lot of people involved with it. And that's truly one of the foundational reasons that we're, picking that back up and fine tuning on some things, but really putting that implementation into work. And Nicole was talking about this morning, one of the questions that came up for us, Scott, and we talked about it just a little bit, was the question about the 1%. We're starting to get some questions about that. And I think there's some information going around about a 1% sales tax. And you were talking about that this morning, just, very big picture. We don't have a whole lot of information on anything like that, but could you share a little bit on that? And then also the timeline for the legislature, just those kind of things. I think that would be really good info for this afternoon or our lunch session, if you could.
Sure. In terms of the timing, the legislature starts about the middle of January and runs to the first part of March. And so for us, that's right during recruiting season. And so there's a very short time frame in which we have to go out and fill our jobs and, plan whatever cost saving measures that we have to do in preparation for the following year. It also takes the Wyoming Department of Education a little bit of time to work up their block grant formula changes, and the more extensive they are, of course, the longer it takes them to do. And that's the tool that we use when we budget for next year. So we're always, waited with bated breath for that thing to come out so we can run our numbers. As far as the 1% goes, It appears that there's an effort out there to have a 1% sales tax that's solely dedicated to funding education. And reportedly, that would be enough to bridge the budget gap that they anticipate for the next biennium. And so, that would be one thing that, we hope that the legislature will take a look at in terms of the funding, as opposed to, having to make these massive cuts across the whole state.
Thank you, Scott. I think one of the things, if we were just to kind of transition to where the district is right now, and I know our schools, we're doing everything we can to keep in-person instruction going and keeping those doors open and providing things to be as safe as we can for our kids in there. And I know we're down to our last 15 minutes, but I think it's really important that we say thank you to everybody that's involved with that, and the hard work of what that really entails to be able to do that and offer classroom-based virtual for our staff so that our kids have options for our families. And we know there's that big increase in confirmed cases in the community, and we're doing our best to mitigate that and keep that outside of our schools so that we can keep going with the work that we're doing. And so we just want to say thank you to that for everybody. And it's not a political thing for the district. It's about our health orders and following those and adhering to them. And so a huge thank you to everybody that's involved with that and that can make that process work, and all those kinds of things that really takes everybody to do that and keep that going so that our families can work, and all those kinds of things that make Sweetwater County be the great place that it is to raise kids. And a lot of people move away when they grow up, but they come back and because it's the place where they want their kids to grow up. And so I think that says a lot for our families and what they want to see in education. So we appreciate that. Any other thoughts? We're down to just the last couple of minutes. Definitely less questions in our lunch bunch than what we had this morning. That must mean that our afternoon session at 5:30 is going to have a ton of questions, right?
I do want to reiterate that I know that this is scary times, especially for our staff, because there is so much unknown. Please know that even the last time we did this, we will continually be communicating out any new knowledge that we get. And I think that even having these talks in and of itself is scary. I know from the personnel side, it terrifies me because people need to plan for their futures and with the unknown. So the sooner the state can get with us on what they're doing, the better. Because from the HR side, I will not be opening positions. I will not allow our principals to be filling anything because I don't know where we're going to be at, which in turn, it kills us for hiring and being able to fill in positions. So the domino effect is just, it's terrible. But I want our staff to have faith that we will keep open communication with you. We will be open about everything. When we find things out, we will be making sure that that information gets out to you guys. But please know at this time, we are only planning for the worst, but we truly are hoping for the best.
I appreciate that, Nicole. There was a question this morning about, people just want to know, and keeping great people and having that staff that we're, proud of to have. So I think that's important. And I also think just, getting honest information out for people. It's not, it's great to deliver, good news and be the one that gets to have all the, positive information to share. But I also think it's important that when times are tough and things aren't as good, about being visible and having the ability to ask questions. And so we're hoping that's the idea that kind of brought this together. We didn't have this the first time when we did this before, and so we're all growing and getting better in our own technology skills. I know
I believe we're being more efficient thanks to technology, right?
I've got lots of work to go on that area, but
We do have a question. Maybe we can we're getting close to the end. Shauna asked, how will the 4-day week affect the budget?
So again, when we did the alternative calendar task force, it was not with cost savings in mind. It was how can we keep our teachers in the classroom more and still offer them uninterrupted, oh my gosh, what is wrong with me? I think I need a hamburger. More uninterrupted time for PLC and to provide as much professional development as we can outside of the school day to keep them in the classroom. With that, on the cost savings task force, there is a doc that will show the sub costs that could potentially be saved depending on the day of the week that is chosen, vertically and then horizontally in professional development costs. You know, I'm estimating about $500,000, and that's a good chunk of change. I mean, it's nothing compared to what they're asking us to cut, but hey, it's something. And that doesn't hurt our people. Unfortunately, I don't know how to answer any other way that the 4-day week could potentially be worked through to help our budget where it wouldn't hurt our people. And we're definitely trying to avoid that. So of course, we're going to have to look at every aspect of the 4-day week for students. I want to reiterate this. We went to a 4-day week for students, but staff will actually be working every other designated day off. Teachers, other staff will still, it'll just depend. The schedules will be different, but I hope we don't have to go there, but unfortunately, it's all on the table right now to have to look at. We just don't want to hurt, I don't want to hurt our staff and we don't want to hurt our students. So I don't really know how to answer that. I guess the potential's there that it could save more, but that's not an avenue we want to go down to start.
I want to say that I'm super thankful because I think that we do plan ahead. And I think that Scott's 3-year projections are very helpful and it took me, let's be honest, Scott, it probably took me 2 or 3 years to totally understand what that was all about. But I think that they're very helpful in making sure that we know the direction we have to go to, and we have been fiscally responsible as a district. And I'm just thankful that we're in a place that's taking care of students, taking care of staff, and also being fiscally responsible.
Zach, we're down to just our last couple of minutes, and we want to make sure that we're available until 12:30 for people. So we're going to stand by here in case any questions. So we're available when we said that we would surely be. And we'll just kind of hold tight in case anything comes through, unless anybody in here thinks of anything that we might be missing to share with our stakeholders out there. But if you have anything else on your mind, that'd be great, or any questions coming in, and we'll just hold tight here and hear what people have to say.
I don't know, I'm dually tasking here because COVID is full. I didn't hit it, I went like that.
Oh, that was me. I could not do that.
Thanks, Scott. They pick on me a lot.
I found my new calling. It's moderator/podcaster.
I know, you're doing a great job. Asking lots of questions as if you don't know the answer.
I don't. It took me a long time to figure that out.
I'm giving you credit for you're doing a good job because the majority of people don't.
You guys with your edgy speak forget what the real world is like. Write down? We know.
It's a new app. We should come up with that. A translating app for educational language.
I've already got it. It's already in my head.
Well, we already need one for Dan in his technical terms.
Doohickey. Thingamajig. Oh, yeah. I forgot about the man's ass. Right? Okay.
A what? No, cut, like the microphone sound.
They're live in the room, but that's it. I've got it muted on here.
Huh? It was, we've had about the same numbers, like around 50-ish.
But tonight is busy.
It's gonna be really busy because all of our teachers will be.
I think the
And then Scott, you were looking at me, I couldn't remember, I think you answered my questions that I had asked this morning, but you're looking at me like, come on, ask me a question. I'm like,
I never looked like that.
you did, but with your eyes, you're like, come at, it was either a come at me, bro, or I led you to the question you usually ask me, and I was like,
I always like the infamous when you wait for you to come up, well, you know the answer, so it's just like
the look.
the look.
Ooh, that, we could use that as part of our EduSpeak translator, like the Duncan look. We could set that as the background on every device in the district. So Johnny, you're 12:45. Oh, I thought it was 12:30.
Well, I backed it up because.
I thought it was 12:15.
I just thought you were coming for the task force, John.
Well, what happened was, when you booked the facility, you know, on the facility thing, when you booked it, it didn't even flag it because you ended at 12:30 and we started at 12:30, and so that's why it didn't flag it. And then I thought, we'll just back it up, give the teachers a little lunch, I guess.
I think we kind of touched on everything for the most part that we got this morning. Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of our staff are doing lunch duties and. Got something. What, if any, is being discussed about sports and other extracurriculars? Okay, Zach, are you ready?
Are you gonna do it?
Okay, so we got one more question, right, to end with from James. What, if any, is being discussed about sports and other extracurriculars?
Right now, the cost savings task force is in a brainstorming session. That is the step that they're at. They're broke up into small groups and they're coming up with any and every idea they can for cost savings. And I have no doubt, again, when I say this, I do not support this. None of us do, but I have no doubt that it's gonna come up, that pay to play is gonna come up and things like that. So right now, it's just in the brainstorming stage, but anything and everything is being looked at in the district for cost savings. Our very first priority is to keep this as far away from the kids as we can and to protect our staff, which is becoming increasingly more difficult because truly this district runs lean. Again, despite some people's opinions, this district does run very lean. And so, so we're to a point though that it's going to start impacting, and there's nothing immune to cuts. Let me just put it that way.
I think it's important that we bring up that that was a request from the cost savings task force, our last meeting last week. Actually, I think it came from my group, not me specifically, but just to know what the budgets are for the activities and the athletics and the extracurriculars. So I think the plan maybe is to bring that information to the cost savings task force for this week.
Well,
Also to
Do you
fit,
have that?
I do.
yeah,
Scott's-
Yep.
Yeah.
oh, Scott's handy.
So the district total is about 1.6 for all of the schools. That breaks down to Black Butte High School of 1,000, Farson about 250,000, Rock Springs Junior High about 269,000, Rock Springs High School about 1,080,000, Wamsutter a little over 2,000, for again a grand total of about 1.6.
Thank you, Scott.
We have one final thought on there. Thanks for the question over in the chat. I'm not sure if we mentioned it this time, but any of the questions that we've got coming forward, either from the task force or from our forums that we're trying to do, we're composing all those in a frequently asked questions document because it's good information. So if somebody is asking that question, we want to make sure we share that and the answer to that. So Scott, thank you for getting those numbers for us. And then also that document, we're just going to keep updating that and put that out there for it. So we appreciate all the questions that have come forward.
Can I do one last plug, Kelly, for the communications email?
Oh, absolutely.
For folks who maybe didn't want to bring it up in the chat for YouTube, we have our communications at sw1.k12.wy.us. It's up on your screen now. We have that email open and available, accepting feedback and comments and ideas, and let us know what you value in education through 4 p.m. tomorrow, November 11th. Once we collect all that information, it will be shared with the Cost Savings Task Force to help them with recommendations moving forward.
Thank you, everybody. Stay safe.